president, what would you urge Congress, or what bills would you like to see and sign to rein in this, sort of overreach of government bureaucracy?
Well, first, I think there's a lot that the executive branch can do, and all I will say when it comes to these agencies, we'll go into this a little bit more as the campaign goes on, but buckle up when I get in there because the status quo is not acceptable, and we are going to make sure that we reconstitutionalize this government. And these agencies are totally out of control. There's no accountability, and we are going to bring that in a very big way. Now, part of the reason it's gotten so bad, power's been consolidated and effectively a fourth branch of government because Congress hasn't used its two main powers that it has under the Constitution. First, the power of the purse. If an agency is gauging in conduct that is outside the realm of what is legal, or you think it's not good for the public interest, then you can remove the funding for those operations. There's nothing that they're not entitled to get the same level of funding every year, and yet Congress runs the government on autopilot, either continuing resolutions or massive omnibus spending bills. So these agencies are all bulletproof. They know that they're going to end up getting something similar or more every single year, and it creates an incentive for them to abuse their power. The other thing you can do is actually legislate, so you're not delegating to the bureaucracy key issues regarding how to enforce federal law. You should define what you want. All they should be doing is implementing. Instead, Congress will basically give an invitation for the bureaucracy to make really important substantive decisions. And so Congress may never vote on something, and the bureaucracy will cite a law from 20 years ago and do things that are going to transform our society or our country. That is not the way the founding fathers drew up the Constitution.
So would you sign the Reins Act? We passed it out of judiciary today.
Oh, yeah, no, of
You want
course. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. That would, I think, be a great check for that. I also think that we're going to have a good chance to see some of this Chevron deference really curtailed or maybe even eliminated based on the U.S. Supreme Court's upcoming jurisprudence. And I think that's another reason why the bureaucracy has become so powerful, because courts have basically been told they can pretty much do what they want, and courts are supposed to just defer. I don't think that that's actually correct. I think the courts, they have to make a judgment about what does the law actually say, and you can't just defer to quote unquote experts in the bureaucracy.
Thank you.
All right, shifting gears, Governor, I want to ask you another topic that's been in the news a lot is Disney. They blamed you for canceling plans for $1 billion investment in Florida, said they were canceling 2,000 jobs. I saw other reports that suggested Disney was going to make the cuts anyway, and due to a larger, budget cutting initiative. Regardless of why they did it, why do you feel your fight with Disney remains important, considering you already beat them on the parental rights bill that they opposed? And what would you say to some of your opponents in this race who argue that the fight has dragged on too long?
So first of all, Florida stands for the protection of children. We believe jamming gender ideology in elementary school is wrong. Disney obviously supported injecting gender ideology in elementary school. They did oppose our parents' rights legislation. And the fact is, when they opposed it, that was a big deal because for 50 years, anytime Disney wanted something in Florida politics, they pretty much got it. But not this time. I signed the bill. We did, as you say, win on the issue. But what happened was Disney's posturing, some of the other statements that their executives were making, kind of the corporate culture had really been outed as trying to inject matters of sex into the programming for the youth. And I think a lot of parents, including me, look at that and say, that's not appropriate. I mean, we want our kids to be able to just be kids. And that's kind of our mantra. So you had this setup that Disney engineered many decades ago, where they actually had their own government that they controlled with no accountability. They were exempt from the laws that all their competitors had to follow, massive tax breaks, and they even racked up municipal debt. And Florida basically put them on a pedestal many decades ago and joined the state with this one company at the hip. We just didn't feel that we were comfortable maintaining that relationship. And so we ended their self-governing status. So Disney has to live under the same laws as everybody. They got to pay the same taxes as everybody, and obviously they'll be responsible for those debts. So the reason why there's a quote fight is just because they filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida, trying to get their special privileges reinstituted. But I don't think that that's good policy. And I think some of these Republicans that are taking Disney's side, they're basically showing themselves to be corporatists, because these are all corporate goodies. This is not the way you would run a competitive economy. And the arrangement had really outlived its usefulness, but it persisted because Disney was so politically powerful. I think the company's ethos have changed in a way that's alienated a lot of people in our legislature and in Florida, and so there was really no justification to keep it. But make no mistake, they're suing to try to get special privileges. People are making money in Florida hand over fist because we have a great business climate. That's not good enough for them. They want to be treated differently than Universal and SeaWorld, and we don't think that that's appropriate. So, I think that they should withdraw the lawsuit, but obviously we're going to defend our actions because we think we have the right to do what we did.
It's funny. The media used to criticize Republicans for being in the pocket of big corporations, and now they're attacking you because you're not.
Well, not only that, David, it's interesting because the media in Florida for years had hammered Disney, and they would point out like that this was not a good arrangement because Disney was not accountable to anyone. I mean, when the state control board took over this district, the firefighters came to the board and they said, "Hey, we weren't getting survivor benefits for some of these widows." And so the state control board actually paid out some of the benefits that they were getting stiffed on. There were a lot of people in Central Florida who were really thankful that there was some accountability being brought to bear because, it's human nature. If there's no accountability over any individual or entity, of course, they're going to behave differently than if you have normal accountability. But the media was always very hostile to that. But just because I happen to be involved and bringing it back to reality and making sure that they were under the same laws, well, then all of a sudden they're running to Disney's defense. I mean, are you kidding me? And oh, by the way, on this project, they had announced this many years ago. They had not done anything for it, but that is actually not in Reedy Creek. So that was in a different part of Orlando. And so none of the issues that are involved in their suit would have made a difference there. Obviously, as a publicly traded corporation, they have a fiduciary duty to do what's best for their shareholders. So I'm assuming if they were in better financial shape and they saw the project as lucrative, they would have gone forward with it. But I think clearly they've had some problems with their stock price and a lot of other issues. And I'd also just finally point out, nobody probably has made Disney more money than me because they were open during COVID and they were closed in California. And that went on for many, many months, where literally I had all the theme parks in Florida opened in 2020. People are going, it's safe, they're having fun. And the California parks were closed. I think they were closed for over a year out in California. So we were, I think, a much better place to be doing business, certainly since I've been governor.
Great. Let me shift gears here to the topic of education. I want to pull Chris Rufo into the conversation. I know he worked with you on some initiatives. I think, one other thing that the mainstream media has, I think, bashed on is they've kind of started promoting this narrative that you want to ban books from school libraries. You refuse to teach kids about slavery or other unpleasant realities of American history, or pretend that gay people don't exist. Since many people, I think, in this room, we're now up to, over 271,000 people. So this is, I think, totally unprecedented in terms of the numbers of people we have participating. By the way, I think Twitter's working much better now. I think it crashed because when you multiply 500,000 people in a room by an account with over 100 million followers, which is Elon's account, I think that creates just a scalability level that was unprecedented. But with my meager followership, it seems to be working much better.
It's we have some scaling issues specifically related to my account. At one point in January, if I tweeted above a certain size, it would crash the servers. And then anyone else who was tweeting at the same time would lose their tweet as well.
So in any event,
issues.
Well, we're breaking new ground here.
We're scaling issues.
Yes, you're breaking new ground when there are bugs and scaling issues. But in any event, back to the question I was asking you, Governor DeSantis, about education. The media has been, saying you're trying to ban books. You refuse to teach kids about slavery. You want to say that gay people don't exist. What is the truth of the matter for people who maybe have never heard from you before? And then I want to pull Chris Rufo in on this as well.
Yeah, so the whole book ban thing is a hoax. There's not been a single book banned in the state of Florida. You can go buy or use whatever book you want. What we have done is empowered parents with the ability to review the curriculum, to know what books are being used in school, and then to ensure that those books match state standards and are age and developmentally appropriate. So, for example, parents have flagged books in schools that, for example, teach middle school kids how to use sex apps, that provide graphic depictions of sex acts and sex toys for people as young as fifth grade. And so clearly that is not appropriate to be in a middle school classroom. And so parents object, and the schools take them out. I did a press conference that we called Exposing the Book Ban Hoax. And before I had the parents come up, before I spoke, I just played the video that had the images of the books that the parents had objected being in their kids' classroom, and the local news had to cut the feed because they said it was too graphic. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a sixth grader or a fifth grader? And so nothing's being banned. They're basically ensuring that we make curation choices that are consistent with state standards. And on the racial history, we eliminated critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. That was the right thing to do. In other words, we're not going to take a kid who comes in at 6 years old and say they're an oppressor or oppressed based on what their race is. That's divisive. That's wrong. We're also not going to be teaching people to hate their country. But what we are going to do is teach the accurate history. So, in the same bill that banned critical race theory, we required teaching thoroughly about racial discrimination that occurred in American history. And Florida's history standards require all of those subjects, from slavery, Reconstruction, segregation, all of that to be taught, and will continue to do that. So I think what you see is the left and the media colluding on this. They don't want to actually defend what it is that we are actually legislating or regulating. So they create these hoaxes that somehow you don't want kids to learn that slavery existed in America, which is preposterous. No one actually defends the offending material. And the question is why are there people intent on trying to get this stuff into the classroom? And I think it's part of a political agenda. So our mantra in Florida is this: purpose of the schools is education, not indoctrination. Yes, I think it's very inappropriate to have sexually explicit material in a fifth grade library, 100%. But it's also the case that if you're focusing on that type of instruction, there's an opportunity cost involved. Why shouldn't we be doing more on science or reading or math? And so I think we're getting it right. And I think almost invariably, and Chris Rufo's had to deal with this too, when they're trying to craft these narratives, if you just peel back the onion, you realize that this is something they're manufacturing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was actually under the impression that there were some books banned, so this is news to me.
And there was the one this week was that Miami-Dade County took a book that was about like poems from I think like Biden's inauguration, and they moved it from elementary school library to middle school library. The media tried to act like somehow this is being banned, and you actually had Miami-Dade County Public Schools spokesperson have to come out and say there's nothing that's been banned or removed. It was basically just determined that this particular book was better suited for middle school. And so they put it in the middle school media center. And the media tries to act like somehow that is offending something with a book ban. So, but I think part of the reason that they're doing that is because, there is actually a movement to ban books from like Amazon and some of these others. California, some municipalities have banned things like To Kill a Mockingbird. What they're trying to do is see if some of these books pass a woke test. And if they don't, they are going against some of those books. Whereas in Florida, you can buy whatever book you want. But that's a different question than what would be appropriate for a third grader or what would be appropriate for a sixth grader. Government, by definition, has to make those choices about what type of curriculum we want to put in front of our students. And the parents obviously have an important voice in that.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, a friend of mine, Tim Urban, who has a blog called Wait But Wine, is really one of the most reasonable people on earth and one of the most reasoned people I've ever met. had a lot of trouble actually publishing his book, simply because it debated sort of sacred cows of woke ideology. But an incredibly reasonable book. So that is the kind of de facto book banning and de facto book suppression that I see quite a lot of. Is that publishers are unwilling to take risks.
Let me shift gears here for a second, because I know we're running out of time. We're supposed to end, I think, around 4, but 4 Pacific. But thank you for giving us a little bit extra time here, Governor. Shifting gears to a major federal issue, immigration. We see I've seen these videos on social media and on TV of what looks like just insanity at the border. What is your take on what's going on there, and how would you address that as president?
Well, I'd reverse what Biden's doing. You need to shut the border down. You should not be entertaining these asylum claims for people crossing illegally. Asylum is a legitimate thing, but these are people that, when they come, I mean, they're being persecuted. These people coming overwhelmingly are economic migrants that are coming across many other different countries. They should be applying for asylum there if they were truly qualifying for that, but they're not. They know that if they just show up at the southern border, and these are people all over the world that are coming illegally, they know that they will get a sheet of paper saying, okay, come back for a court date in 3 years, and they get released to the interior of our country. It's an absolutely insane system. So we'll stop that. We will move on day one by declaring a national emergency. We will construct a border wall. We will make sure we have remain in Mexico and that we're not entertaining those claims in that way. And we really need to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable, because they're facilitating a lot of this migration. They obviously make money off of it. They treat a lot of these people very horribly as they're trafficking them through Mexico and into the United States. And of course, the cartels have been responsible for moving massive amounts of fentanyl into this country, and that's killing tens of thousands of Americans every year now. And what they're doing is they lace the other types of drugs with the fentanyl. So you may have like a teenage kid doing something they probably shouldn't do, but in prior generations would not have been fatal. And now if it's laced with fentanyl, these kids can overdose and die. And so mothers are losing kids as a result of this fentanyl epidemic. And I just don't think you could allow these criminal organizations to continue poisoning our population. So it'll be a day one issue. We will bring overwhelming amount of resources to deal with it. And we are going to stop this insanity once and for all.
There's a, I think, follow-up question on immigration from Steve Dace, who is a national radio personality and I think an important commentator in the great state of Iowa. Steve, do you have a comment or question? I think you just need to unmute. If Steve can unmute, then we'll go ahead and ask him for a question. If not, we'll keep rolling here. All right, 3, 2, going, gone.
I'm there,
All right,
guys.
sorry, Steve.
I'm there, guys.
Oh,
Sorry.
there you go.
He is.
All right.
Yeah, my bad. First of all, I want to echo what Congressman Massey said to Elon. Elon, if I put down money on January 1st, 2022, that Twitter was going to be the last bastion of free speech on earth, brother, I'd be about as rich as you are on that bet right now. I mean, it's incredible what you have done here, and the restoration of a lot of accounts of people that were truth tellers and were ran from here for telling the truth. I saw a meme the other day that said, of course you have scientific consensus when you censor all the scientists who disagree. So I wanted to just say, first and foremost, on behalf of a lot of grateful people around the country and the world, really, thank you very much for that and the investment you made in that cause. Thank you. A question is a follow-up to you, Governor, on this very issue with immigration. We have heard a lot over the years, lock her up, drain the swamp, going to build a beautiful wall. Mexico's going to pay for it. And crowds cheered and everybody loved it. And brands got built and nothing got done. What is the bottom line assurance that you can make to the people that are listening right now, all over the world and all over the country, that you can actually do the agenda that you just articulated when others tweeted about it and talked about it, but then couldn't actually follow through?
It's a great question because I share that frustration. I think even my worst critics in Florida will acknowledge when I tell people I'm going to do something, I don't make promises or say I'm going to do something lightly. I've thought it through, and I know that I am going to follow through on what I tell people I'm going to do. So this is one. There will be follow through. Number two, I understand the different leverage points that you would have under Article 2 of the Constitution. I studied that a lot at becoming governor about Florida's Constitution, doing the same thing for the federal Constitution. And you've got to know how to use your leverage to advance what you're trying to accomplish. So, for example, there's leverage that we can use vis-a-vis Mexico that I think presidents have not been willing to do. I think sometimes for political purposes. But I'll look at, okay, what are all the variety of options we can do? Which buttons can I push? And I will do that to be able to bring this issue to a conclusion once and for all. We had Hurricane Ian come through Southwest Florida, Category 4 plus storm, September of 2022, and it did a lot of damage. But one of the things it did, it knocked out a bridge going from the mainland to Pine Island, and it severed the Sanibel Causeway in 3 different locations. And the locals were being told it's going to take 6 months to get that stuff repaired. And so they came to me, even though these were not state-owned bridges, and they said, can you help us? And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I got my guys together. I said, listen, no bureaucracy, no red tape, and no excuses. Get it done. We need to open these bridges back. Pine Island Bridge reopened 3 days later. Sanibel Causeway opened 2 weeks after that, way, way ahead of schedule, because we wouldn't take no for an answer, and we wanted to make sure we got it done. So for me, it is not a campaign slogan that you get in and then forget about it. I'm, as an American citizen, if I wasn't running, this would be an issue that bothers me. I've put a lot of my capital as Florida governor involved in combating illegal immigration. We banned sanctuary cities my first year. We just did a strong anti-illegal immigration bill in Florida that's working. I've put marine assets in the Florida Keys to help the Coast Guard repel boats from places like Haiti. I have people at the southern border right now helping Texas, and we've even been able to relocate illegal aliens to places like Martha's Vineyard. So I don't think any governor has probably gone out of his way to do more to try to make an impact on this issue. And I'm not going to take no for an answer. And I think our voters are sick of the empty promises. They want to see action.
Thank you, Governor.
Well, Governor, I saw you on the cover of Time Magazine this week, and I think they were trying to do a negative story because they had you were sort of scowling in this portrait they made of you. And in the article, they call you, they compared you to the Terminator. And I think they meant insult, but I thought it was kind of cool. I thought it was a good thing because I think we need a cool-headed, ruthless assassin to go in and basically take on the woke mob, take on our out-of-control government, and take on problems like the ones at the border. So, again, I thought it made you sound great, even though that may not have been their intention.
Well, look, at the end of the day, this whole business that we're in is about producing results. I don't care about fanfare. I'm the governor, like that is, I'm known, right? And I go around the state and everything, and people are very nice. And so, I appreciate the well wishes, but I don't need any of the fanfare. I don't need any adulation. I just know I'm in a position where I have a chance to make a difference, and I'm either doing it or I'm not. And I remember sitting at the desk in the state capitol my first day as governor 4.5 years ago. I looked around the room and I thought to myself, I don't know what SOB is going to succeed me in this chair, but they are not going to have anything to do because I'm getting all the meat off the bone. I am going to make sure that I'm leaning into issues and making an impact. And we have done that in the state of Florida. And I bring that exact attitude up to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Governor, I'd love to jump in and follow up on that. This is Chris Rufo, and I've had the honor of working with you in the past few years on critical race theory, gender ideology, and the DEI bureaucracy. And what I've seen up close and personal is that while many conservative politicians, going back decades, have made headlines and got on television playing culture war, they never actually get anything done. And what you've done over the last few years is really astonishing. You've eliminated CRT from all Florida's public institutions. You've stopped gender ideology dead in its tracks in K through 12. And just last week, you eliminated the DEI bureaucracy in all of Florida's public universities. They'll be shut down completely. And I think what you've done is established a blueprint for fighting back against the left's long march of the institutions and making sure that those institutions reflect the value of Florida voters, not left-wing activists and the partisan press. So my question for you is, DC is another animal. It's quite different, the scale of the federal government. And how are you going to deliver results? And what is your culture war strategy facing down the swamp in DC?
Well, some of it is similar in this respect. When we're taking on things like DEI, you get blowback from legacy media and the far left. But that's an example of an issue where they are out of step with the vast majority of Americans. It's not just Republicans, it's independents and a lot of Democrats. Because you think about, if you're a parent and you've got kids, you want to know when they apply to college, they're going to be judged based on their merit, and they're not going to be roadkill in some type of woke Olympics where they didn't fit some category and so they're denied opportunity. They want to make sure that achievement matters. And so we get a lot of quiet support for a lot of those things. And so I think what I do, just because, look, I'm a blue collar kid. I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, working minimum wage to get through school. My grandfather worked in the steel mill in Western Pennsylvania. I just know instinctively kind of what like normal people think about all this stuff. And I have a good sense of when the legacy media and the left are outside of where the average American is, because people want you to be using common sense. And things like DEI, I mean, when I was growing up, I think things were better because people were actually told you should try to get along. Now they're told you need to segregate. And it's just crazy that they're trying to do all this stuff. So by eliminating that, there's a lot of people that were really happy about that, including people that certainly are not traditional Republicans. And I think there's similar issues when you do in the federal level. It's also the case that there are some tools at the federal level that we don't necessarily have at the state level. For example, some of the problems with the university and the ideological capture, that didn't happen by accident, can trace back all the way to the accreditation cartels. Well, guess what? To become an accreditor, how do you do that? You've got to get approved by the U.S. Department of Education. So we're going to be doing alternative accreditation regimes where instead of saying you will only get accredited if you do DEI, you'll have an accreditor that will say, we will not accredit you if you do DEI. We want a colorblind, merit-based accreditation scheme. And so as president, controlling that agency, you can then approve other types of accreditation. So I think part of it is just knowing where are all the pressure points? How does it get to the point that we then see and that somebody like you will run a report on? Like when you see some of the outrageous stuff that's generated in some sociology department at a university, that didn't just happen out of thin air. There's a reason why we got to that point. And I think that there are some tools with the federal government where you can push back and try to get these institutions moored in a more foundational direction about, hey, we're pursuing truth here. And we're not here to try to impose one niche ideology on the entire student body.
Great. Shifting gears, Dana Lash, you have a question or comment for the governor?
I do. And thank you both so much for your time, for joining us in a very new way. I really appreciate that. I think it's really cool. And for your support of free speech too. And Elon, I have to say thank you for taking the arrows and for unthrottling the accounts of all of us who got in trouble for sharing a New York Post story about a laptop. And Governor, I wanted to thank you for your leadership and your unwavering support of Second Amendment rights. And you're on my program tomorrow, and I just got to say, you got my vote in the primary, so I appreciate it very much. You were talking about DEI just a minute ago, and I want to ask you both about this growing threat against natural rights and free enterprise. It's this threat of debanking. Now, I know that, Elon, I've read so much about you and what you've gone through. You've called ESG criteria evil incarnate. Governor DeSantis, Florida, saw financially weaponized wokery earlier this year when Wells Fargo Bank dumped both the business and personal accounts of a very prominent and well-respected gun dealer in Florida. They'd been together for 25 years working with Wells Fargo, and they cited new ESG guidelines. Now, similar to the DOJ's previous Operation Choke Point, all these activists for various causes are using this regulatory guidance to debank what they consider to be politically incorrect businesses for the sake of risk management. Now, we say that our rights should not be infringed upon by the government, but what can and should be done about activist-guided financial institutions and these payment processors who are essentially cutting off law-abiding citizens and businesses?
Well, I think it's a fundamental issue that I think not enough conservatives have been wise to. I think more and more are, but at the end of the day, we have certain fundamental rights, and so maybe you're somebody that is, really excited about your Second Amendment rights. And obviously, if the government comes in and infringes that, we know you blow the whistle on that. That's a problem. But what if Wall Street banks are colluding so that somebody can't function in that space, whether it's running a store or anything involving that? Your rights are still being infringed upon in that situation. And so I think this whole ESG movement is really trying to do through the financial sector what they could never achieve through the ballot box. And so they're trying to do an end run around the constitutional system, and they're really trying to change policy. They're trying to change society, and they're trying to change the scope of people's rights. And so in Florida, I just signed anti-ESG legislation, which said things like no ESG criteria in our pension fund. We got a $180 billion state pension fund. No social credit scores for consumers when they're going to bank. In other words, if you apply for a loan, that loan should be judged based on your credit worthiness, not whether you're genuflecting to the appropriate left-wing causes. But one thing we did do is we did provide protection against this debanking with the woke banking. No discrimination based on your religion and other things, which we know is happening. So I think it's a fundamental question, but we will not be a free society if major financial institutions can do through the economy what people could not achieve through the ballot box. Our rights will be restricted, will be the end result, and that's not healthy for a free country.
As a follow-up to that, Governor, Dana mentioned Operation Choke Point, and that is a term that's very familiar to crypto companies in Silicon Valley and fintech companies. Basically, it refers to an effort by the federal government, including the SEC, to basically regulate blockchain and crypto companies out of existence. They really feel like they're being driven out of the country. And I'm not talking about scammy ones or the totally fake ones like FTX, but really high quality, good companies, including companies that are public like Coinbase. And these guys are basically begging the government for just a framework. They're just like, tell us how to operate legally and we'll do it. I guess where do you come down on this? What is your view, I guess, broadly of Bitcoin and people's right to hold Bitcoin and to transact Bitcoin?
And Dogecoin.
You have every right to do Bitcoin. The only reason these people in Washington don't like it is because they don't control it. And they're central planners, and they want to have control over society. And so Bitcoin represents a threat to them. And so, as you're saying, they're trying to regulate it out of existence. Look, could Congress enact a statute to ban things like Bitcoin under the Constitution? They may be able to do. I would oppose that. I think people should be able to do Bitcoin. But Congress has never addressed this in this fashion. And for the bureaucracy to just do it on their own and make it so people can't operate in that space, that's what we mean when we say we've got to return the government to the people's elected representatives who are our voice to be able to make these decisions. And so as president, we'll protect the ability to do things like Bitcoin. I think these are people that are sophisticated. They can make decisions. There's risks involved with it, but let them do that. I just do not have an itch to have to control everything that people may be doing in this space. And I think that the current regime, clearly, they have it out for Bitcoin. And if it continues for another 4 years, they'll probably end up killing it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that is the strong feeling of people in Silicon Valley who are in this space. And I think we'll be heartened to hear your answer on that. I mean, the weird thing is that, and there is a huge constituency of crypto Twitter. So for people who are maybe part of political Twitter who are wondering why we're talking about this, it really has a big audience for this topic.
Dogecoin too, I just want to emphasize. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Bitcoin and Dogecoin.
Yeah.
So shout out to all the Doge fans out there.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is that this administration, they seem to want to ban Bitcoin, but they want to create a CBDC, which stands for a central bank digital currency. What's your take on that?
So we were the first state just last month. We actually got the Florida legislature to pass a law that says Florida does not recognize central bank digital currency, because some states were actually adding that to their uniform commercial code. The federal government's studying this. We did the opposite and say we didn't. Now, the reason why we did that is because what the Federal Reserve has said is, well, we're going to consult with Congress. We'll consult with the executive branch. We don't have a CBDC right now. And ideally, we would get authorization for Congress. Well, wait a minute. It's not ideally. You must get authorization from Congress. I don't think Congress would authorize it. So if they unilaterally try to do this, we're trying to provide protection for people here in Florida. I know Biden did the executive order. They're studying it. I can tell you, if I'm president, we are not doing a central bank digital currency. I think that would be a huge, huge imposition on people's financial freedoms and financial privacy. And oh, by the way, what would the logical result of this be? If the central authority has oversight over this, of course they're going to start imposing ESG criteria. Oh, wait a minute. You filled up your gas tank 3 times this week. You can't do any more. The sky of how they would be able to manipulate this. So I see it as a massive transfer of power from individual consumers to a central authority. And I don't think that that's good for a free society. So I'm a no on central bank digital currency.
Sounds
Great.
good.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, Governor, I want to thank you for the time. I mean, we could go for hours here, but I know you only had an hour and we've gone over that. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know there's so many people who want to ask questions, and
we should do it again. I mean, I think it was fun. I think this is great. And we'll make sure that that we come back and do it again. This is a great platform. I mean, I would like to see other platforms going in the same direction, but a healthy democratic society needs the robust debate. So I just want to thank everybody for listening in, and I'll just make that pitch again. We want you on the team. We'd love for you to go to rondesantis.com and make a donation so that we can get this done on this nomination and win the election in November of 2024. God bless everybody, and thank you.
Well, thanks, Governor. And yeah, we have over 300,000 people in the room. It's really been pretty incredible. And, we started with some technical issues because of the sheer scale of and unprecedented nature of what we were doing. But it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I think this finished really strong. So
yeah, I think it's just really great for the people to hear directly from presidential candidates and to have it in a conversational tone, which obviously results in, it's going to be imperfect because it's not scripted. So, but it's genuine. And I think that really gives the people an opportunity to understand who might be their president in a way that's real. So thank you very much for coming on and doing this.
And the invitation's open to any other candidates who might want to do this.
Absolutely. It is important for people to hear directly from candidates. So thank you for working with us on this historic event, and looking forward to future conversations and just having a great national dialogue.
All righty, everybody. Thank you for just.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.